All right, welcome to the second video in this series. This time we're gonna go ahead and start the project. We're gonna set things up and we're gonna actually start sculpting and tweaking the character creator model before we jump into ZBrush and tweak the head mainly. That is gonna ultimately give us the nice expressions and the wrinkles in this project. So let's go ahead and jump straight into it. All right, so here we are back in CC4. So what I'm gonna do is start fresh so that you can follow along and kind of like repeat the same steps that I do. But again, this could work with absolutely any character that comes with Character Creator, any base mesh. So I'm gonna click on File, New Project, and I'm not gonna save any of this. So this is gonna give me a fresh start for Character Creator 4. All right, so I'm gonna make sure that I go to the content. And if you don't see any of this, you can go to Window and bring content from here, or like that panel from here. And what I'm gonna do is go to Items. And you might have like slightly different things, so you might see different things from what I have here, because I have some extra packs that I purchased and a few other things that you might not have, but I'm gonna try to work with the most basic and essential things that work quite nicely. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on Actor here. I'm gonna click on Character, and I'm gonna click on Base. And you have these neutral male and neutral female. So you can start with these ones, right? Or you can actually start with something that has a bit more information in terms of the details, and those are just based on the scans, and they come with Character Creator as well. So I'm gonna click on Pack here, and let me just go back a little bit here. And these ones are something that you can download straight away. So just look for the characters from Character Creator in the pack. So just make sure that you are in this tab right here. All right, so I'm gonna double click on this folder for these characters. And if for whatever reason you don't see these ones, you can also go to the search bar here and just type Kevin or Camilla. Those are the names of these scan data. And these are the default scans from CC4. So I'm gonna use Kevin. I'm gonna click and drag this into the viewport here and just wait until it loads. Perfect. So we have a pretty cool character that has, you know, skin details and all of that good stuff. So we're gonna concentrate on the face. But as a quick reminder, if you wanna, you know, change the body and tweak things in ZBrush, all you have to do is select the character and click on this icon right here to send it into ZBrush, and then you'll bring it back in here. But again, I have already covered that in previous tutorials, so this time we're gonna concentrate on the expressions and the wrinkles, so mainly the face area. However, if I wanna create a full body character that kind of like looks slightly different, you can change things all within CC4. So I'm gonna click on this icon right here, on this switch, to enter in the morph, and nothing happens, but basically I can now hover over the different parts of the body and the face, and I can adjust this. You can do the same thing from the modify tab. If you click on this third icon right here, which is the kind of like the morphs, if you don't see this, again, you go to the window, and from here you can just basically bring all those panels that I'm showing you. So let's say that I want to make something a little bit, you know, shorter and stocky. I can click on this area and click and drag just to make it a larger sort of chest area and back. Maybe the same thing in here. And I can also add a little bit of thickness to the arms and the forearms, maybe a larger hand. You know, just gonna stylize it a little bit, not too much, even though already looks pretty stylized. And maybe increase the size of the head and the neck as well. Right, so it's pretty easy, a simple way to adjust your character. Just gonna make it a little bit shorter and stockier. All right, so that's not too bad. And that's it. That's in terms of the, let's say, of the body. That's pretty much all I want to do. Don't worry too much about the pose. We're not gonna focus on the pose just now, and we're gonna concentrate on the face. So I want to have something that, you know, it's a little bit more stylized. I'm gonna start clicking and dragging around the face to adjust this a little bit. I want maybe eyes that are spread apart a little bit more. So I'm gonna click on this one right here, push it to the right hand side, and as you click these different areas, let's say if I wanna make it a thicker or wider nose, right? You see that it automatically selects the kind of like the category here in the modifiers. And also, let's go ahead and bring this a little bit closer here so you can see more of this. You can change this from the slider, so you don't have to click and drag. I prefer to do kind of like the overall, let's say the blocking just by clicking and dragging parts of the face. Maybe I wanna, you know, thicker lips, push the nose up a little bit. So I can do the kind of like the main modifications of this from the viewport just by clicking and dragging. Want some larger eyes, right? And then I can just go ahead and click on a specific area or go through these categories or these sliders, and I can adjust it. So the jaw height, for example. So I'm gonna make this a bit shorter. Corner as well. So this is kind of like here on the side. right? So there's a lot of customization that you can do. This is pretty fun, and you can spend a lot of time just clicking and tweaking things, and you can get very, very specific. So if I click on the eyes, for instance, just this region right here, and I expand the eyes, I have the general shape, I have the type of eye, so I can make it more of an almond shape. And the cool thing about these sliders as well is that you can exaggerate these values. So right now, this eye almond is set to 0. If I set it to 100, you see how it changes, but I can also go to 300, right? So really exaggerate this. I wouldn't advise to push these numbers too much, especially when it comes to the expression, because it's it's breaking the mesh and breaking the topology. So I'm gonna set this to 0 anyway, but just know that you can do it if you wanted to. Now let's say if I select the nose here, we can go, you see there's a bunch of sliders that allow you to tweak all sorts of things for the nose. So let's say the nose bridge, for instance, you can just change the shape. It's very subtle. In fact, one of the things that you can do if you want to be able to see the volumes and the primary shapes better than what we have right now with the with all the texture and all of that, this is kind of like on a side note. You can do it if you wanted to, but it's not necessary. It's not a step on the process. So we can go here to the textures, right? And let's go ahead and select everything from the head to the leg. So these 4 sets, just pressing the Shift key just to select them all. And then we're going to scroll down all the way here where it says strength. This is basically the strength of the albedo texture. I want to set this to 0. And you see now we have no texture in those 4 sets, basically the body and the head, right? And then I'm going to go down here a little bit where it says material settings. Right now, this diffuse color is just white. I want to click on that and make it kind of like a darker tone, like so. Click OK, so that we can see the values or the volumes a little bit better. So that's a bit better. Let's go back to the morphs, and again we can select this region of the face, play around with the bridge of the nose, push it up so we have more of a straight shape there. We can just push this up even more by clicking and dragging. So there's a lot of things that we can play around with, just with manipulating these sliders. Let's reduce the nostril width. So you can create something that is very unique, very customized to whatever you want to create in just a few seconds. Now, the whole point of this tutorial series is that I want to show you how easy it is to integrate everything that you're doing here in this awesome software with ZBrush that you might be more familiar with. So in my case, I'm very, very comfortable with ZBrush. I also like to use this software a lot, but when I combine the two, that's when I get the most out of it, right? So let's say that I use these morph modifiers and these sliders to tweak the head and the shape of the character, like the base, right? So let's call this one the primary shapes, right? I can go ahead now and send this to ZBrush, just the head, and manipulate the main form. So I can adjust it a little bit more, right? So as an example, so I'm just gonna go ahead and load a character that I have already tweaked, but this is basically the result of what I just showed you in this first part of the video, which is just using the morph targets and the morph in the face to adjust the body, right? But obviously I have an A pose in here, but you see it is the same thing. So I'm using Kevin, and I'm kind of like tweaking the body and tweaking the shape of the head. All of this is generated and created using those sliders, right? And obviously I have the texture back on, but again, if you wanted to, you can do the same thing that I just showed you, selecting the 4 main shaders or main texture sets, and then change these back to something darker. So exactly the same thing as I had before. I also got rid of the boxers just so I can see the full body. Again, we're going to concentrate just on the face. But you see, it's pretty basic, pretty simple. I'm starting to push the stylization, the wider eyes as well. I want probably a thicker area around here. I don't want I don't want these areas to be that sharp. So these are the type of things that I'm going to edit and tweak in ZBrush. But I just wanted to show you that after you spend a little bit of time with the morphs and tweaking these sliders right here, you can get something that looks pretty cool, pretty unique as well in terms of the body and the head as well. Now, before we jump into ZBrush and tweak the main shapes of the head, what I want to mention is that I'm using a scan data. So that means that because this is Kevin, this is one of the characters that we use. This is literally Kevin just adjusted. This is a scan data, meaning that because it's a real human or a scanned human, it's not going to be 100% symmetrical. So if I send this to ZBrush and start tweaking things in a symmetrical pose, kind of like what you see here, some of the points are not going to match. So it will be a little bit tricky to do it. So what I would recommend you do when you're using anything like these characters that are scan data, in fact, there's a few more. Let me just show you. some packs that I already have in here that you might or might not have, like this Scan Reality Pro. This is a pretty cool one as well. So these are scan data, so they're not going to be symmetrical. So if you use any of these characters, what I would recommend you do is force the symmetry within CC4 before you go into ZBrush. Now, keep in mind that in ZBrush, you can use posable symmetry, and that would be helpful to an extent. But it's better to start with a character that is symmetrical already before we start adding details and all of that. So what you can do is with this scan data, we can go to the scene, we can select Kevin, right? And let's go to the modify tab here, the first one, right? The attribute editor or the attribute section right here. And we're going to scroll down to where it says edit mesh, this one right here, right? Make sure that you have the character, the full character selected, not just one portion. It has to be the entire, like the root character. And then click on edit mesh. And then here's where you can edit things like the vertex, faces, all of that good stuff. I'm just simply going to go to the bottom where it says mirror copy, and you can mirror from left to right or right to left, whatever you want. I'm just going to click on, before I click, actually, I'm going to get closer so that you can see the subtle thing that it does, the subtle change. Again, pay attention to the wireframe just so you can see roughly what happens. Very, very subtle, just around this area and around here. But now we have a symmetrical character. That's pretty easy, right? Let's click on edit mesh just to get out of this editing. And now we have a symmetrical character that we can send into ZBrush. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. Again, very, very simple. We're gonna click on the plugin, and you see I have that installed already. It's the ZBrush Face Tools, and I'm gonna click on Face Tools. Now, if it is the first time that you are sending things from CC4 to ZBrush, you might get a pop-up asking you to select the version of ZBrush that you want to send to. But because I have already kind of like set up the connection, it's not appearing here. And then the next thing would be this transfer. So I'm going to click on base model only, click on OK. And then I get this pop-up window that allows me to select a few more things. So I'm going to make sure that the action is create new, because that's ultimately what I want. I don't have anything in ZBrush. Let's just go back into ZBrush. So this is a clean scene of ZBrush as well. I just have the face tool plugin here on the left-hand side. This is from the ZBrush C plugins palette. But right now, I don't have anything in ZBrush. This thing that you see here is just a 3D cam that I created. I'll show you this later on if we have time, how to create one of these yourself. But basically, this is an empty scene or an empty canvas. So basically, the action, I'm going to leave it as default, which is create new. If for whatever reason you close your project and you want to continue working on it in a couple of weeks or whatever, what you can do is load your project from ZBrush, like your C tool, load your CC4 project, and then in the action, you can just click on relink, and it will just relink both of them. But in this case, it's going to be new. The subdivision level, you have two options. You have 2K texture at subdivision level 6, or you can send a subdivision level 7 a 4K texture, right? Now, in this case, because we're going to edit the main shapes and the primary shapes of the face, it doesn't really matter, so I'm going to leave it at 2K. When we get to do the wrinkles and all of that, we're going to increase this to level 7. The rest is the same. It's going to keep the normal details. The normal details is going to send a layer of details that we're going to edit as well. You can take this off if you want to have like a clean, sort of smooth version of your character. But I'm just going to leave the normal details so that you see how cool this is. So yeah, basically the default settings. Now this section right here is for the expressions. We're not gonna do the expressions right now in this video. So basically all you have to do is just leave everything as default. We can change a few things later on, but this is the default settings. Let's click on Go Z. And CC4 is gonna go through the process of sending this entire project into ZBrush. It's going to take the subdivision levels into ZBrush, and it's actually going to bake the normal and the detailed information of the character that we have in CC4 into a new layer of details in ZBrush. So we just need to wait a little bit until this process is complete and all the different expressions and all the layers and everything in the system gets transferred. But you'll see it's very, very simple once you get the hang of it. And I'm going to show you how these things work behind the scenes so that you don't get overwhelmed with all the switches and the workflow and all of that. We're going to keep things very, very simple. Behind the scenes, what CC4 is doing is creating a bunch of layers in ZBrush, the normal sculpting layers. And the switches that we have in the Face Tool plugin allows you to switch between those layers to turning them on and off and record on those layers with a simple button. But ultimately, what we have here, or like the project that is being set up in ZBrush, is just a simple base mesh or base model that has multiple subtools and a bunch of layers that allows you to visualize things differently. All right, so now we are in ZBrush. Here is our character. And if I open up the geometry palette here, you see that we have subdivision levels. So I'm going to get to subdivision 1, so that is a little bit easier. And if you don't see this texture, it's because you don't have the range enabled. So I'm gonna go through this plugin really quickly before we actually update anything of the mesh. The first button right here, the refresh face tool, is essentially when you save this project and you open it in a week's time or something, you can just click on refresh face tool and it will refresh that connection between CC4 and ZBrush. It's pretty simple as well. The update eyes, teeth, and tongue. This is important when you start to do the expressions. So let's say if for whatever reason you do the jaw open and you want the, I don't know, the teeth, for example, to be pointing forward or whatever you want to do, you leave this on so that when the expression is transferred to CC4, it also does it to the teeth, which are not part of the same mesh. Let me just show you. So subtool. So we have the mesh of the teeth separately, the lower and the upper teeth, as well as the tongue. So that's going to be different. So this one is good to try it. I actually don't use it. I prefer to modify the position and the placement of the teeth from CC4, and I'm going to show you how to do that as well when we get to it. But yeah, this is pretty much the initial setup. Then we have the diffuse and the range. The diffuse is the texture. So we will have not this one, but we will have all the texture that we had before. So it will be this texture right here. Set this to white again. All right, so if I click on the diffuse button, the plugin is going to bring in that texture that we had in CC4 and apply it here in ZBrush. Then you have the range. That's the one that I was talking about. So if I click range, you'll see all it's going to do is going to go through the entire project here, and it's going to turn off the texture. So if I go to the texture palette, this is kind of like the behind the scenes. I'm showing you what the plugin does so that you have a better understanding. You don't worry too much about this later on. So you see the texture map is just this texture that if I turn this on, it's basically clicking on the range. So that's all it's doing, but it's doing it automatically so that I don't have to go through every single subtool in case I want to turn this on and off. So yeah, this is pretty simple. Just want to make sure that I have that on because it is important to keep that as my reference. I'm going to click on range. And again, all it's doing is going through all the subtools and it's going to enable that texture so that we can see it. Then the next thing that I have here is the detail layer. So let's go ahead and go to the geometry palette, go to the 6th subdivision level. I'm going to turn off the range and change the material just so that you can see the level of details that we have a bit better. There we go. So you see all of those details are coming through, and those details are essentially what we have here in the normal information of the face, right? So depending on the scan data that you use, or depending on the project that you load up, if it is not Kevin, if it is Camilla, or any of the other projects like Tate, for example, they will have different details that when you send them to ZBrush, they will come through as details, as like a high subdivision details, right? Or a high subdivision level details. So what's cool is that all of these details are brought in as a layer. So if I turn this layer on and off, it's the same thing as turning this switch on and off. But again, it does it automatically. So I'm just going to click on this detail layer, and there we go. So all those details are off, and you see the layer is also off. So again, all of this plugin is just to simplify your life with just simple switches, but you could do the same thing manually in ZBrush. But that's what I wanted to really emphasize in terms of how this plugin works, so that you don't get too stressed about this workflow. It's actually really, really simple. All right, so now that I covered this kind of like behind the scenes, we can go ahead and start tweaking the face. If for whatever reason you don't see what I see in terms of how the character was imported into ZBrush, just make sure that in the preference, I'm going to click on preference here, go to the import and export tab, and within this tab you have the import section here. So just make sure that you have the iFlip Y and iFlip Z enable and the X disable, and also that you import the polygroups. The rest is, by default should be like this. So just make sure that the import settings within your import and export subpalette looks like the one that I have in here, in case your character doesn't import correctly. But it should be pretty easy. All right, so with that out of the way, let's go ahead and enable range again. I prefer to work with the range so that I can see what I'm editing in terms of the portions of the face. And let's also go to the subdivision level 1. And at this point, we can just go ahead and use any ZBrush brush that we want to adjust the shape of your face. So I'm going to use a move topological, and I'm going to go to the brush palette here and clean this up. And I'm going to go to the curve and I'm going to enable AccuCurve so that I have a more pointy shape. And I'm going to go to all the way to the maximum size of the brush, right? So 1,000. And you see it's pretty small. And at this point, because we're changing kind of like the primary shapes of the face, it would be ideal to have a larger brush size. Now, the problem is that because the scale of ZBrush is different than Character Creator, the size of this character is massive. So we're using a very large brush that has 1,000 in the draw size, but it's still pretty small. So what we need to do is tweak the way that the brush size works in ZBrush in relation to the scale. And that's a pretty simple thing to do as well. We can go to the preference and we can open up the draw subpalette here. And you'll see this is the maximum number that I have in, if I right click, you see the draw size the same. So we can go ahead and push this all the way to 5,000 and the dynamic brush scale as well to 50. So this is now a lot larger, and you see now you cannot even see now it's a huge brush, so we can just reduce it now, right? So this is something that you'll have to do once or every time that you open ZBrush and work with this scale. Now that I have that, I'm going to press the X on my keyboard, or you can also go to transform and click on symmetry, right? And that way we have symmetry, and because we use that tool in CC4 to adjust the symmetry, you see we have pretty consistent symmetry all around, right? I'm just hovering over the different points in here. All right, so at this point, again, it's just more about tweaking the shape. So I'm going to hold the Alt key just to push along the normals of this model. So I'm going to refine the shape of the face. One thing that I would suggest, and this is a very cool trick so that you can maintain the placement of the eyes without affecting this too much, is to mask this region. So holding the Control key, I'm going to click on the mask option. I'm going to go to Mask Lasso, get closer here, and I'm going to hold Control and just mask an area here. Maybe let's do it again a bit properly. All right, so this whole area is going to be masked, and I'm going to invert the mask, and I'm going to make sure that at the back as well is masked, because this is just a projection brush. So in other words, if you mask this area, it's also going to mask the same thing here at the back. All right, so now this is masked out. Let's go ahead and invert that mask, and we can go ahead and modify the entire face without worrying too much about the area around the eyes. All right, now this is the time that you can go ahead and completely change the character, completely change your the look of your character. Like I said, what I'm going to try to do is make something kind of like a bulky guy, slightly stylized. But we're gonna create all the realistic wrinkles and all of that good stuff. I just wanna get something that it's a little bit more exaggerated in terms of the shapes. All right. If you want to create something completely different, you can just go ahead and maybe remove the nose section altogether. Just keep in mind that the expressions are gonna be slightly weird, right? But you can totally do that. You can create pointy ears or remove the ears altogether as well. So you can create an alien-looking type of thing. It's totally up to you at this point. But I wanna try to keep it within the range of what I've already tweaked within Character Creator. Maybe just push the back of the head so it's more of a flat, almost a squarish shape like that. So I think that's pretty cool. All right, something like that. Let's go ahead and sharpen this nose a little bit as well. And the reason I wanted to cover this initial step, again, this is something that might take time for you to do, but the reason I want to cover it with these polygroups is because it is important to understand what you're moving or the polygons that you are adjusting at subdivision level 1. So if I want to create this fold right here, let's go ahead and turn off the range. You can do this, at any time, right? And let's also hold Shift F just to remove the polyframe as well. Let's say if I want to create a more exaggerated fold here around the nose area, I can just go to the brush, the standard brush, so BST. So this is I think I have the Z add disabled. Let's turn that on. So this is the effect of this brush. So I can use this to create, let's say I'm doing this not in the best way possible, but I just want to give you an example. So let's say that I created this fold around here. Again, it's not ideal, but I think it illustrates the idea. So this will be my fold around here, right? But if I enable range, you'll see that it's not necessarily following that crevice or that line. So this is one of the most important things when you're tweaking your face. If you want to add whatever you want to add, just make sure that it's within the confines of this, the flow of this topology. And that's what it is important to have the range on. I'm going to undo that, turn the range back on. There we go. So yeah, if I want to add this, I'm going to do it around this area. So let's go ahead and add a bit. And also I'm gonna reduce the intensity of my smoothing brush. So pressing the Shift key and the spacebar or right click, you can access the intensity of just the smooth brush. All right, so I'm just gonna exaggerate that a little bit. There we go. Again, we probably need to smooth this out a bit more. All right. Now this is kind of like tweaking the basis of it, but of course you have multiple subdivision levels. So we can go to maybe level 4. That's already plenty. And we can literally sculpt all of this. Let's go ahead and bring in the build up clay brush. So B, C, B. And that allows me to just create a little bit of faster volumes around this area. So I'm just gonna try to literally sculpt my concept and then obviously smooth this out as I go through it. But yeah, this allows me to customize this in any way you want. By the way, another cool trick that I can give you at this point is instead of turning this on and off all the time, the range, what you can also do, and I believe this is something that was introduced around ZBrush 2021 or 2020, so you should have it, which is within the render palette, you have this fade option. Let's go ahead and put this here on the left-hand side, that allows you to fade the opacity of your poly paint. So you will see that the mask area that I have here around the eyes also kind of like fades out. The poly group or the poly paint, sorry, or the texture also fades. So I can just leave it as that and then continue this process. Right? I'm not going to spend too much time in this process just because I've already done it. I just want to show you the general workflow so that you can also follow along. And let's say if I want to sharpen this up, let's bring in the damp standard brush by pressing BDS. I always get confused. BDS. And I'm going to follow this really thick line in the reference of my texture. And I'm going to increase the brush size a little bit. There we go. We can also sharpen, let's say, the lips. So I'm going to press the Alt key. So that's the inverted effect of the damp standard brush. And again, I'm trying to follow the flow of the topology. It needs to be smoothed out as well. But roughly, this is what the idea is. Obviously, I'm doing this a little bit too fast. You can spend more time. And definitely, if you want to tweak this type of, let's say, secondary shapes, I would recommend you do it in a, let's say, subdivision level 2, so that you can control that sort of volumes a little bit better and it doesn't become like a blobby, sculpt. And then of course you can just go up and down in subdivision levels. But that's generally the idea, right? So let's go back to subdivision level 1. Let's set this back to 0. Let's clear the mask. Remember I had a mask for the eyes. And let's go back to ZBrush Face Tools plugin. And this is the last thing that I'm going to do to wrap up this video. So if I go back to CC4, I just want to show you a comparison of the before and after. So I'm going to take a screenshot of this and I'm going to bring in my pure ref. I'm going to drop it in there. And that way I can just take another screenshot and show you the comparison between the what we had here with CC4 and now the tweaks that we created in ZBrush. All right, so once you finish this initial setup, again, don't worry about the expression yet. Don't worry about the wrinkles or anything like that. You just need to worry about the main shapes and the general structure of your face, let's say, or the character. And just make sure, the only thing to keep in mind really, as I keep saying, is the topology and the flow, because that's gonna affect how the rig reads the expressions, right? So I'm going to go ahead and click on Update to CC4 or Update to Character Creator 4. So let's click on that. And it just goes through the process of sending all of these things to CC4, but it's going to ask us to select a few things. So let's just wait until it goes through the process. There we go. So this is the pop-up window that you should get. So you'll see we can update a bunch of things, but we haven't done any expressions or wrinkles or anything like that. So we can just go ahead and click on this checkbox. So we're not going to send any of that information yet. We'll do that in the following videos. And the only thing that we changed was the base mesh. We haven't done any details or any cavity blend, any of that. All we've done is the base mesh. Now, in terms of the facial parts, we have the head, teeth, eye, and tongue. You can actually adjust all of them and send them into CC4, but in this case, we just did the head. I'm going to leave this as it is, just to show you something. And I'm going to click on Update to Character Creator. So basically, I turn off all the expressions and wrinkles. And from here, I'm only updating the base mesh. I'm going to click on Update to Character Creator. And that's it. You'll see the file has been successfully exported. You can switch to Character Creator to view results. I'm going to click on that, and let's go ahead and switch to CC4. And then we have, let's put this here on the side. We have all of this. Now, this is kind of like by default. I'm going to make sure everything is ticked on because we didn't change the texture. This is grayed out. There's no textures that we're sending back to CC4. It's just the realignment of the mesh, right? Let's click on Update. And there we go. So all the nice tricks that we did in ZBrush have been, maintained. Now, just to wrap up this video, again, let's go ahead and do, I moved the camera, but let's try to do something similar. I'm going to go ahead and take a screenshot, and I'm going to bring it here. And let me just go ahead and do a quick comparison. Just cropping these two images side by side. So you see, it does quite a big difference when you start with, this is kind of like more humanoid, I would say. This is starting to get a bit more stylized, and you have more of a triangular, blocky or squarish shape, and that's done within ZBrush. But in terms of the textures, the details, everything else is working fine. I'm just gonna do a quick test just to show you that even though we tweak the proportions and the main volumes in ZBrush, the expressions are still there. So I'm gonna click on this icon here, which is the second one, is the motion pose. Click on Edit Facial Attributes here, and then we have the same thing as before. We can go ahead and make this guy smile, frown, and whatever, right? So everything is working pretty well. All we did really was just to edit the main shapes. So that's it for this video. I know it has been a long one, but it's important that you take the time to refine the primary and secondary shapes of your model and tweak the stylization that you want so that you can create an original character. Now, in the next video of the series, we're going to actually start doing some detailing to the skin of our character, which is pretty fun. I'll see you there.